What's going on, everyone? It's Mitch from RespectMyReason.com coming back with another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast, looking at the best in legal cannabis across the map. Today, joined by special guest Tom Dolan, VP of Media of Jane Technologies. How you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you on here, man. We got derailed a little bit due to a case of the COVID, man. But we back online. I threw some shots at you in the email saying you weren't willing to Michael Jordan through the flu game, man. But we made it happen, man. We made it happen.
We sure did, man. It got me, but I'm back. I'm back. I'm live from New York and feeling so much better. So thank you.
I
Thanks for
love that.
bearing with me.
Yeah, no, it's all that's the best part of this last year has been, or last 2 years, it feels like a year, but the last couple of years that have blended together have just been for me just the understanding. I feel like I'm rather on the skewed to the side of understanding, the spectrum of understanding in general, but this last year have just made it ever aware that you just don't know what's going on in someone's life. Even when we're at home, working from home, seemingly everything should be easy and accessible. Just a wrench out of left field could be thrown in your day and just ruin everything, man.
I mean, seeing other people's perspective and just being grateful for what you have is like that's the takeaway from the last couple of years, and just meeting people where they're at. So I appreciate you moving this and giving me some space. Thanks, Mitch.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. Hey, we've had a couple episodes where like kids have been crying in the background and people feel so apart. And I'm like, bro, I love it. And the same thing. I'll be in the call sometimes with clients or something, and my son will be asking me. I'm like, hold on, and like, no, don't, just let him. I love this, man. I'm a parent. I love it. And again, it's just that understanding. I think everybody's just being patient with one another, man. That's what we got to do. Well, before we get to too much into Jane, I want to dive into yourself a little bit. I kick off every episode with our guest origin story around the plant being cannabis. So whether that's personal, professional, or whatever you feel, choose to be vulnerable in sharing. I'm just kind of curious when you and cannabis started your relationship.
Yeah, sure. I'll share a little bit of both. I mean, they're kind of interrelated, but God, I've seen the plant help a lot of people. From when I was a kid, I had a grandmother. Suffered from glaucoma, eventually going blind. This is 30 years ago. Her doctor said, hey, I'm not supposed to do this, but why don't you try cannabis? And it was the one thing that helped her get through it, through, college, seeing friends with social anxiety disorders and medicating on the plant, being in the creative industry and seeing it open people's minds. Me personally right now, being a dad like yourself, being a weekend fitness guy, it's part of my wellness routine, from sleep to pain relief to just being present. And so professionally, how that's related is long career in marketing, from creative agencies through marketing technology companies and things like that. My last couple of years was with a startup, and just so blessed to have this ride of, we IPO'd it and we sold it to another company, and I went from a leadership team in a startup to leadership team in this multi-billion-dollar 10,000 person company, and I was just miserable. And I walked away realizing, like, I like the journey. I like to scale things, and started consulting, and was super blessed to meet Sock and the founding team at Jane. And I mean, really quickly, I realized these were special people on a special mission about safe access to the plant. And if I was able to combine my professional passions, which is scaling a business, growing leaders, growing people, with a personal passion, which is safe access to a plant. Imagine if, like, people like my grandmother 30 years ago had access to treat that way, how it would change the world. So it's just been an awesome journey and a pleasure. And I'm honored to, like, I'm really lucky person that gets to work on, leverage my skill set in an industry that I'm super passionate about.
And how has it been? Obviously, cannabis is, Jane is a startup, relatively new startup in an incredibly, startup industry, right? The cannabis industry has not been been around very long. How is it going do you feel like that just traditional, and when I use it in this sense, I mean just non-cannabis startup realm prepared you for cannabis, or how much of the nuances and the craziness in this industry do you feel like are just nothing can almost prepare you for that?
Oh man, a little of both, right? Like I think I've had my own startup. I've joined other startups. You know, the chaos, the pace, the hyper growth. You know, there's nowhere to hide. There's no cushy positions. Everybody's got to roll up their sleeves, be super involved in the business, and really truly believe in the business. I mean, obviously, those are the tenets of startup life. As far as the cannabis industry, you know, I don't think anything can prepare you for that. You know, the changes day to day, you know, the volatility, but also, you know, it's an amazing space because there's so many pain points. There's so much white space. We're writing it as we go. So, you know, yeah, it's hard, but I think in the cracks between what's difficult creates tremendous, tremendous opportunities. So if you're a startup person who likes to, you know, change the convention, try new things, fix pain points, it's the best industry I've ever been involved in. There's just so much work to be done, and you know, it's also an industry where there's just tremendous camaraderie and so much room for growth. And if we just all kind of grow the industry in a responsible way, there's so much room for every player to be really successful.
I love that, man. And I was just telling an aunt over the weekend at my son's birthday. They were just talking about the cannabis industry. Somebody previous to the cannabis industry had joined her company, which is not in the cannabis, and she's like, "Oh, he's." Oh, it was saying not anything like bad, like, oh, I expected him to be a bad dude, but it was like, oh, this is such a good dude. And I was like, well, man, my experience with cannabis is so many people's like purpose and why, whether it's, you know, through relative or personal, is attached to this plant. And you just find so many, you know, if you have an industry where people's just purpose and why is rooted in it, it's much different than I know Jane is tech, but it's tech in cannabis as opposed to like my wife. And I know a lot of friends in the Seattle area that work in tech where it's like, they're there for the bag. Maybe they like the tech and moving and helping people, but a lot of people are in just non-cannabis tech, right? For there's a bag there, and that's the main reason they're keeping them there.
Yeah.
Whereas cannabis, everyone kind of chooses to join this car that's being built on the road that's not quite paved yet because of passion and purpose.
Yeah, you know, the way I talk about, like, I've been really grateful to, you know, have a career, do a lot of different things, lead sales oriented teams, strategic teams, things like that. Joining this industry, this is the first time I'm part of a mission based team, if that makes sense, right? Like, it truly is about safe access and bringing wellness and, you know, growing this industry. I've never experienced that before. And, you know, that sense of camaraderie, that sense of pride in what we do, that hope for the future is just like an awesome thing that can unite us all and keep us motivated through, you know, the volatility and the crazy times that come as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on that subject of, you know, providing safe access, obviously Jane has been powering, you know, dispensaries with e-commerce menus. It's been one of the core product offerings and working with brands, which we'll dive in a little in a second. But, you know, the consumer facing app launched here pretty recently, which is you know, for me, it's like the natural progression. If you're launching all these e-commerce menus, then you have a centralized hub where consumers can go look at and can further connect people to obviously the retailers, the clients. I know there's a conversation. Sometimes there's an outside conversation of two different products that might potentially have served two different purposes. What's the balance of working them together? I personally, from a complete outside perspective, see how they intertwine and work and can add value back to the traditional consumer. But I'm just kind of curious your take on that and how's everything going with the launch in general?
Yeah, it's going well. Thank you for asking. Obviously, we've had the, you know, the web-based.com presence for quite some time, the marketplace, and now moved into app form. I mean, to me, I think about it as incrementality, right? The consumer is going to want to shop in many different ways, and who are we to dictate how the consumer wants to shop? And if they want to go directly to their retailer and the menu page, that's awesome. We're going to give them a best in class product for shopping and, you know, serve relevant ads to them and make the conversion really easy. If they're a consumer that wants to go through a marketplace, we want to make that a wonderful shopping experience as well, with reviews and, you know, recommendations and serving up all the different products. And, you know, for the retailers, it's about incrementality, right? We want to bring as many shoppers to their retailer environments. And so even if you're coming to the Jane app, you're purchasing, through our retailer partners, and we're driving them through that funnel, and they're getting delivery or they're going to that dispensary to pick up the product. So it's just about giving consumers choice, and making sure that we're meeting the consumer in the place they want to be met to shop successfully for the industry.
And I didn't ask this beforehand to preface to let you look this up, but I'm just curious, kind of so it might be off of some data you've looked at recently, or just a little bit of some instinct. But I'm kind of curious from your perspective of the online consumer. Is your feeling that online consumer? I know it's going to be a mix of both, but do you feel like it skews more towards the experienced consumer or the inexperienced consumer that's using online platforms to order cannabis?
It's both. It really is both. I don't know that it's about their experience in the industry. I think just it's their experience with shopping in general. There's a cohort of consumers that are purchasing everything online and expect everything to be at their fingertips. And then there's other people who want to go and experience the retail environment. Obviously, it does. If you know what you're going to buy, and you don't want to. You want a quick, efficient trip through that dispensary, ordering online and picking up is a very easy way to do it. But I think it's a little bit of everybody, and it's situational. Sometimes I order online. Sometimes I'm in the car going past the dispensary and I drop in the dispensary. So I think it's quickly becoming almost like this ubiquitous thing that everybody uses both channels.
Yeah, and I've noticed from working hands-on with retailer clients, like if they do a good job tracking their data, and it's never, perfect, but tracking the data of the in-store consumers in terms of where they originated from, how they heard of them. Hey, the special you came in to grab, did you see it in store? Or you see it in an advertisement? Do you see it on Weed Maps, wherever? Understanding that in-store data and matching it up with the online data, you can see the progress, right? And what I've found, at least personally, is obviously there's a ton more people that leverage online and then still shop indoor, but right, they look at the menu before they go in, whether it's trying to find what products are available, looking at the specials, learning a little bit more about the strain. I know something that Jane's done really well is having those verified reviews, so you can trust it's not some fugazi stuff going on, right? Of going and seeing what people are actually saying about the products. And I think that the e-com marketplace, I think we often overlook when I talk to, retailers, they're always like looking at online conversions, which is great. You should be looking at that. You should always be working on that. But I think there's also this other step of just whether it's the optics on a brand in general or just educating the consumer base, right? Like a website or just digital, an app, anything digital, right, serves as a basis for conversion, one, but it also serves as so much more. And in my opinion, I think probably at least I don't know, I'm throwing complete numbers out there, but maybe 3 to 6x more people are going to look at something in the digital format and then go convert in person, where you lose that conversion in the data. But it's important to have your menu looking proper, that information on there. And so when you guys are working with retailers, what is it that you guys work with to ensure that they have like the best online or digital merchandising with their menu system?
Yeah, so a lot of that comes back to the technology that's been built at Jane over the last couple of years, and we call that the content catalog. But one of the biggest pain points in the industry right now is like this lack of product standardization, or if you were in CPG, you'd call it the UPC code, right? There is no standard code across all products. So if you're if you're the grapefruit rosemary can product, every dispensary may input you in their POS or code you as a completely different product, different name, different spelling, different whatever that might be. So we've been working hard to build what we call the content catalog. I think it's up over 1.5 million SKUs right now. It has, spelling, product shot, everything from dosing to description. All of that is standardized, and every Jane partner has that content catalog standardized across every dispensary, their online menus, our marketplace. And so that's really step one. Is a lot of people can't even track like what they were looking on online to was that bought in store. And so standardizing that catalog is probably one of the most important things we bring to our partners in our industry right now, because it has effect on inventory, it has effect on the media business that we're building for brands on top of it, attribution, obviously. And so that's really for us been step one, is how do we just make sure we're standardizing what that product is, how that product is referenced, the description, the reviews associated, everything in a standardized single individual catalog across the whole industry.
That's doing the Lord's work again, working from retailers, some other companies that I'm not going to throw them under the bus publicly, but there's another one that we were digging through the other day, and it was just, I don't, it wasn't the fault of the retailer, but the brand had like the description, the product description and the product title both mention like the weight, like one said 7 grams, one said 3.5 grams. And I was going through their menu and I was like, why? Like, this is so confusing. Customers are having, like, I know what I know way more than the average consumer. And I'm like, what is this, a quarter? Is it an eighth? I'm confused at what these products are supposed to be. So we really appreciate you guys doing the Lord's
Yeah, I
work.
mean, we've gone so far as we have a self-service portal that our brand partners go in, whether wherever they are, whatever brand, whatever in category they're in, anything, they can go in, they can standardize their catalog. We have a team that can help them do it. We can lock that catalog. Like, there's so many options. And then we also have the AI built of how that's going to change by state, how it has to be reflected state by state on different menus, what the packaging is going to look like state by state. And so it's a pretty streamlined, seamless experience. And we've had so many brand partners, just say how valuable that is, because they can put that in there once, and then they're going to show up on everywhere that they're in stock. They're going to be standardized across all of those menus just by updating this self-service portal. So we're trying to make it pretty seamless for the industry.
And with, working with brands, right? Like the lack of advertising options in cannabis versus non-cannabis is a huge talking point. Personally, as a marketer, I hear people complain about Instagram, all day. I don't know why people are so fascinated with something that doesn't love them. I probably sound like a broken record at this point. I've said that a lot. If it was in a relationship between two people, if someone did not love you that much and you were so fascinated with you, everybody in your life would be telling you to stay away from that person. Not enough people in cannabis are telling people to just leave Instagram alone, or at least check, stop putting so much emotion and energy into it. And I always challenge those people that complain about that. A lot of them don't even have a background in Instagram or online advertising. So I don't think they understand, even if they could do paid advertising on there, I don't know how effective it would be. Working with, whether it's Jane or someone similar to Jane, right? You have the only consumers that are on that online portal or on the app are cannabis consumers. I mean, sure, maybe there's a couple candy curious people looking to be educated or learn, but the vast majority of people are consumers. And they're not only just consumers, they're likely have cash in hand ready to make a conversion, right? And there's very, very, very few places to advertise, market, or reach consumers that are a guaranteed cannabis consumer that have cash in hand ready to make a conversion. So I'm kind of curious how you work with brands in that space through media buys and advertising through the platform.
Yeah, so we try to keep it really simple. So everything you said, right? So people are coming to dispensary menus. We have this huge network of dispensary menus. We have a marketplace. They're coming there to make purchases and learn about new items. And so we give brands the ability to just put their products at the top of the menu. We call it sponsored rows, right? You may have seen it in other large marketplaces and on other menus. We also have placements inside the category. So, inline first placement card in those categories they can buy. We have product pages that they can advertise on. There'll be new placements coming out in the future. And it's really just about consideration, right? Get there in front of the consumer, make sure you're the top of the page, and then conversion. We see 3 to 5x sales lift from these types of campaigns, because like you said, people are in market, they're ready to purchase. Also, we do a lot of work around machine learning and things like that to make sure we're serving up the right items to the right people. And lastly, our technology is we're only showing up when that item is in stock. So there's no wasted dollars, right? So you go to a menu page, We're going to highlight products that are relevant for you as a consumer. It's definitely in stock. And so that's a way for brands to just make sure they're getting in front of the right people right at the point of conversion. And we've tried to build it as a win-win-win for the industry. And by that, I mean, like, consumers show up on these pages, they're given relevant advertising, they're given relevant merchandising of items that they would like and may want to try. That's a great experience for the consumer. From a brand perspective, awareness, consideration, conversion. And then from a retailer perspective, we do rev shares on all the ad programs there. So it's a great way for them to make incremental money, as well as a lot of these programs drive basket size. And so we're really just trying to make this, create this network and ecosystem where we're moving product, increasing velocity for our brand partners, and everybody wins through the ecosystem. The other thing that we work so hard on is attribution, right? Like, that's a huge pain point in this industry right now. A lot of it is because there's no standardization on the content catalog and things like that. So when you run these programs, you get media metrics like click-through rate, number of impressions, share of voice, things like that a lot of other platforms may or may not share out. But because we're tracking at that individual item level, we at the end of these campaigns can also tell you how many products you sold, total sales of that campaign, ROI, long-term value of that customer acquisition cost, sales all the way down to at individual retailers. How much velocity did the campaign move? What retailers are performing better for you from a media perspective? And like, this is the most margin compressed industry I've ever seen in my life. And so, brands need to understand every dollar that they put out in marketing, what is that return on investment. And so we're working really hard to really push what attribution should and can mean in the industry.
I love that, because I mean, marketing and advertising, I always try. I mean, there's a lot of ways I do it, but summarize, one of the many ways I summarize it is like, it's an attempt, right? Marketing and advertising is always going to be attempt. It doesn't matter how experienced or educated you are. There's always the A/B test, right? And there's always a room for improvement. And most of the time, it's like, you could A/B test something until the end of your life. You just finally get to a point where you're like, all right, that's not worth it. We'll focus on something else. Or, hey, let's continually further double down on something. So I love that, having that attribution and being able to understand what's working better, as you can run a campaign, and then your next campaign you can refine. Hey, let's cut these regions out. Let's cut these retailers out. Let's exclude these products, or focus in on these SKUs or these offerings. Do you feel like brands are taking a look at that data and putting it into action? Or is it still like, one of the big points that I see in this industry is bandwidth. It's any one of us, any one of us that are in the startup phase or in this industry, I think we could all benefit from increased bandwidth. But do you feel like brands are able to take this data, actualize it, and leverage it right now?
I think they are. I think the entry point of that, right? There's a lot of brands that don't have tons of resources or tons of time. So just getting a report back at the end saying, hey, I put $1 in, it returned this much ROI is really helpful to justify, should I be spending and how many items I move, all the way up to brands that are using this data in a really sophisticated way. Like when we talk to them to say, hey, we turned on this campaign, these are the retail locations that drove more and there's more velocity. That's not just a marketing conversation. That's a sales and trade conversation to say, holy cow, this footprint of retailers is super sensitive to different marketing levers I can pull. I better make sure I'm aiming my supply chain over there to first make sure I have product there. And second, these are great partners of ours, and how do we support them? And knowing that they're sensitive, why? Is it the concentration of consumers? Is it the way they're merchandising me, right? And so there's tons of learning. It's a matter of how deep you want to go with those. And we're trying to train our team to say, just be solution oriented and deep partners to these brands. We want to work with the small ones, the big ones, everybody, and we want everyone to win. And so how do we translate those insights for the campaigns to make sure that they can help drive our partner's business and spend the extra time to say, hey, you should be looking at it this way. Like, we're really trying to become pretty consultative around that, and not just be a media partner. We're also in the e-commerce and velocity and sales, and we want to be able to, make sure that we're sharing those types of insights with our partners.
I like that, especially on the brand level. Marketing in tandem with sales, that's such an important like intersection. Again, being a third party marketer myself in this industry, right? That's working with brands. I found the most success in understanding, like being able to communicate the sales value of marketing. I found that a lot of brands, even that enter the conversation, that want to do B2C, whoever's cutting the checks, whoever the decision maker is, it somehow somewhere filters up to how can we get on more shelves, or how can we do better sell through on shelves, which obviously is the B2C component. But when they can understand and actualize a marketing spend translated to how that affects sales, that's when I think these brands really start to get it and really start to double down on things. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I hope brands out there are understanding that they have this type of tool in a potential tool in their bag. Because like you said, if you understand, wow, maybe e-commerce wise, we're selling really well at these accounts and we haven't been doing so well maybe without that added lift, then that means something needs to shift. Maybe it's the in-store merchandising. Maybe it's, hey, we're crowded on the shelf, or packaging or whatever our offering blends in too much and we're not standing out the way we are online, right? It starts to uncover these further questions of how we can not only be successful with this marketing, but also kind of internalize that and be overall successful in general as a brand.
100%. And also, like, what is the purchase cycle of my customer, and what is the acquisition cost to bring in a new user, and is there a long-term value of them, right? Like, you start to understand how people are shopping your products on a much deeper level, and who are the right audiences to go after. Are some kind of short-term consumers versus other long-term consumers? What else is in the basket? What else are people shopping? Are there, if I'm buying pre-rolls, or am I also buying edibles, or like, how does this all work together, and what does that mean for me as a company and a brand as I think about my products? We're deeply fascinated by that, and having those conversations every day.
No, and that's impactful on the retail level to understand, right? Like something that's been in working in traditional retail before. And again, I'm using traditional as anything that's not cannabis, outside of cannabis retail. And I'm really trying to break the habit. Anything outside of cannabis retail and cannabis retail is that what's missing in cannabis retail is that like understanding that upsell. Some people do a great job at this. I talk to GMs and people at stores all the time that do a great job of this, but having those, if it's in person, right? Having those smaller, hey, I'm checking out. Oh, just throw it in the bag, right? Your packs of gum, your candy bars at the grocery store, right? Yeah, just throw it in there. Understanding these traditional retail practices that are able to be put into cannabis, but what you guys are doing when it's looking at that data in terms of e-commerce, that's when you can take it to a whole nother level. When you're able to make product recommendations based on, I'm throwing this in the cart, hey, would you like to throw this as well, right? Like that's a common thing across e-commerce that for retailers helps increase that basket size, right? And increase that customer retention, because if I'm getting recommendations based on my behavior, I'm likely to engage in them, right? I'm not being served cold. It's not a cold ad, right? I'm served something that I'm interested with, and there's a much higher level of engagement with that.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many new people coming to our industry, right? And like, a lot of people aren't, well, most people, and unless you deeply understand kind of what you're shopping for, most people aren't that brand loyal, right? And they're promiscuous across all these different brands. They wanna try new things. Like that's part of the fun of our category right now. And so if a retailer can serve up things that are incredibly relevant to that consumer, I think they're going to create loyalty from that consumer, because they're going to have a great experience, and it's going to be relevant. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. And it's everything shopping should be.
And continue that conversation on just the advertising avenues through you guys. So if I'm a retailer, I know I can customize my menu based on however I want to, whether flower category wise, brand wise. And then do these retailers leave like towards the top there's a section for advertisers and they can kind of opt in and opt out on that, or how does that process usually work on
Yeah,
that?
it's a sponsored grow, and a retailer could either choose to opt in to carry that type of merchandising on top or in their inline category ads, or they don't have, they can opt out. But if they opt in, they take a revenue share on it, and it can be tens of thousands of dollars a month for some of our big retail partners. So it's a great relationship, and we're fascinated with what are those units and those ad units that can even drive more incrementality for the retailers in the future.
And these are popping up on browser and app, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of, back to that, the advertising avenues for brands. There's not a lot of those, and then adding those collaborative marketing opportunities between brand and retail. That's something that we're big to preach on, whether it's a retailer, lean on your top performing brands, or brands that want to get in your store. You hold a little bit of leverage, right, to not rake them over the coals, but like, let's work together, and with the goal of, we want to increase our revenue, you want to increase your revenue, we have to sell your product to increase our revenue. Like, if there's a give and a take on both sides, right, we're creating a marriage where we're able to grow both entities.
Yeah, and get smarter about each other's business, right? And mutually help each other. And by the way, help the consumer too, because you're giving them relevant products to try. So yeah, it's really all about just making sure that retailers, brands, consumers are all winning, and we're growing the industry.
And across the different SKUs, in terms of this merchandising, this advertising opportunity, do you feel like, I know you said you see an increase in conversion, does that kind of oscillate a little bit between what type of what product type someone's offering? Like, is that more advantageous in edibles versus flower, or is it pretty similar across the board?
It depends. I mean, there are so many variables. What's really interesting about this industry is there's so many differences between stores, between product assortment, between state, right? So to come up with these standard things, we keep trying to get to benchmarks and things like that, but there's just so many nuances in this industry. Yeah, results do vary by category, and we talk about that right away. And then different placements on the menus. Your top of menu, that is more about awareness, reaching everybody at the menu. Then if you're down in the category, those are people that are category buyers, right? And that it's less about total cannabis exploration and more about exploration within the category. And so because of that, we look at it different ways too. We have different pricing models. Top of menu is more awareness type pricing, where inline is down on performance pricing, on cost per click and things like that. And so we're trying to be very thoughtful of why you use each different placement on the menu, what your brand objectives are, and then also kind of the ROI and how you're going to pay for that. And it's all solution based on what you're trying to achieve. Is it just awareness? Is it deeper funnel conversion? What is that? What is that objective? And let's build the plan together.
Data-driven solutions, man. What else? What else is Jane? Obviously, the app launched this year. What's Jane got up his sleeve for 2023 that you can leak, or is it all tight-lipped right now?
No, we're starting to think about, are there solutions off the platform to drive incrementality back into these menu pages where we know there's conversion. And a lot of those solutions are similar, right? There's a lot of players out there that do that. Results are marginal. I think where we play in that space is, again, insights, learnings, attribution. If people come to our from any media into our environment, we can start to tell brands and retailers, are they new shoppers? Are they lapsed shoppers? Are they loyal shoppers? How do those different segments convert? Are you driving true incrementality? So we're really leaning on just how do we bring more information, more learnings, more results to the industry based on actual sales conversion. So you're going to see more of us trying to bring more knowledge, more understanding to more media resources, and and lots of other stuff up the Jane sleeve in 2023. And we're just looking forward to continuing to create safe access to the plant.
Man, I love that. I appreciate your time today, Tom. For people out there that want more information, iHeartJane.com, or what's the name in the app store? Is it just Jane, right? Under
Yeah,
Jane?
just look for the Jane app. It's iOS only right now. We're waiting for Google to get into the cannabis game, but if you're an iOS user, just look for the Jane app.
We don't talk to people that don't have iPhones, man. They got other issues that that I can't see past. Personally, no, I'm just kidding. Check that out if you're on iPhone. Man, really appreciate you hopping on here. This is the North American Weed Tour. We are looking at the best in legal cannabis across the map. I think we got one more episode coming this week, and then we're about to cap it at the end of the North American Weed Tour campaign. It's been a journey traveling around, interviewing great folks like Tom here. Tom, really appreciate your time. For everyone tuning in out there, subscribe, reach out. Appreciate you guys.